This is the Shine On You Crazy Daisy podcast, and I'm your host, Trudy Simmons from the Daisy Chain Group, providing platforms and opportunities for businesswomen to be seen and heard. This platform is for the women entrepreneurs that want to hear the real stories of what it takes to be yourself and run a business with all the different hats that you might have to wear. Come and join the Shine On You Crazy Daisy membership, offering online networking, co-working, collaboration and monthly masterclasses for you to grow your knowledge. Go to thedaisychaingroup.com for more information. These are the platforms to hear and share the stories of the tenacious, the rebellious, and the resilient women that are working towards the future that they build for themselves and their families. Hello and welcome to the Shine On You Crazy Daisy podcast, and I'm your host, Trudy Simmons. Today, I am thrilled and excited to introduce you to Leanne Wheeler from Leanne's Look of Paint. Leanne, thank you so much for being involved in the book and the podcast. Please tell us about your business.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to. It's been really interesting to do it. Yes, my name's Leanne. I run Leanne's Look of Paint. It's a decorating company. I have been decorating for a number of years in and around Winchester, and I've used a lot of my experience obviously decorating people's homes, but I'm in the process of launching a new course and help people learn to decorate their own homes.
Amazing and very much needed, I would think, in this climate. Thank you. So what was really brilliant about your story was this investing in properties at the beginning. So tell us about investing in your second property and the secret panic you had each time you spent money.
Okay, so it's quite a funny story, this one, because I literally, bizarrely, we sold the property yesterday. So it's a story that's kind of gone full circle. But initially, I took a risk. I saw a property that I absolutely loved. I knew I could make some money on it, but I also loved renovating property at the time, which I think is sort of two major aspects of what I do, is to love what you do and enjoy it, but equally it's also about creating money, and increasing wealth. This particular property, I could see it had potential. It was a beautiful Victorian property. It was it had been unloved. These two old ladies had lived in it for years and years, and it had bits and pieces done to it, but nothing substantial. It didn't have a bathroom, for example. They had a little shower in a back room, and I knew it had great potential. So I bought it. I borrowed, my father had invested some money, lent me some money in a previous project, and he decided to keep that money in. So it was a deposit of £30,000, which, God, it'd be amazing if you could invest in Winchester these days with a deposit of £30,000. I set about renovating it. The day that it actually completed, the purchase completed, was actually the day of the run on Northern Rock, which, not to highlight my age too much, some people might remember, but it was basically the day that the market began to crash. Any credit dried up. So any money that I'd been promised to invest in the property to renovate it literally just went, evaporated. So here I was, with a wreck of a property that wasn't, habitable, and I somehow had to, renovate it for it to actually be worth anything. So I funded the renovations on my credit cards. I begged, borrowed, stole. If there was stuff in the property that I could sell, there was an old Victorian toilet that I sold on eBay, and raised any money I could. I let all the rooms out in the house that I lived in to some student nurses to pay my mortgage there, and eventually got the renovation done. Went to put it on the market, and of course it wouldn't sell because the market had died. So there was a point where I was getting these lovely valuations from estate agents saying to me it was worth, this huge amount of money. But of course, I couldn't realise that money. All my money was tied up in this property, and I was literally at the point where I couldn't pay my bills. So there was a sort of a turning point where I had to really get some sat down and really had to get control of the situation, started to kind of work out a budget and a plan for how to pay that debt back. And at the same time, I managed to get the property let out. So there was a sort of a turning point where I then began to learn about letting out property, and the regular sort of passive income that I could earn that way. But equally, there was a point where I began to really understand a bit more about how to budget my money a bit better and plan for the worst, I suppose.
Crikey, and what a time to go through all of that. If I could just point out that when you said beg, borrow and steal, that's a phrase you didn't actually steal.
No, I didn't.
Just checking. What you said was that you decided to make a plan rather than giving up. But what drove you at that point?
Well, I think I was in, you take a risk, and that's something that I did that probably not a lot of other people would do. I think, that you have to be prepared to take a certain risk and make certain sacrifices. I was so determined to, the whole premise of this originally was to begin to take control of my finances and my income. I previously had a corporate life. I was, on the outside, it was relatively successful, but I was just about making ends meet. I had no enjoyment, no satisfaction in my life. And that, there I was, I sort of found myself at my late 20s, early 30s thinking, well, what is life all about? So the whole premise of this originally was to begin to take control of my own life and control my finances and take control of my income. So I was in this point where, outside, to a certain extent, market forces had taken things out of my control, but I still had to see the situation through. I still had to make the situation good. And that you have to sort of hit a kind of a low point, which I did. Really thought, my God, this is it. Am I going to have to declare myself bankrupt? But there's always a point where if you're determined enough and you've got enough belief in yourself, and that's what so much of it is about, that you have to somehow hold on tight and sort of weather the storm and just have faith that it's going to come good. And that's kind of what happened, because I sat down, like I say, wrote out my plan, who I was going to start paying for, how I was going to start paying for things, who I was going to pay first. I wrote to my suppliers that were still outstanding their money and said, I'm in this situation, but I will pay you. You've just got to bear with me a bit, so you've got to face up to the problems, honestly. But you've also got to have faith that you can see it through and back yourself.
What I absolutely loved about reading that was the communicating with the debtors, because it is so easy at that point of sticking your head in the sand and thinking it will all go away, or I don't need to look at it, or if I don't look at it, it's not really happening. And as you just said, that facing up to any problem that anybody's got in their business and saying, I'm going to communicate in a way that feels right, like I'm doing the right thing, it was empowering to read it in the way that you did it.
Good, thank you. Well, I think now, even more so, I've got an appreciation of small, how small businesses run. Cash flow is so important, and all, I've had customers who have taken their time sometimes to pay me, and they don't realise I'm dependent on that to pay my bills, pay my mortgage. I don't do this as a hobby. I'm living on this money, and I don't think sometimes people realise that. So, I think, all these things are sort of, it's all about good karma, isn't it? You treat people how you want to be treated yourself. And that was what I basically did. I said, I've got myself in this situation, but it will come good, and I'll pay you. And that was what I did. So,
after doing all of that, you then go back and get a corporate role. Why on earth did you then think, I know what, from this safe bit of my corporate role, I'm going to start working for myself?
Well, by that point, I still had this huge debt, that I was chipping away at. So I had to go back to corporate life. But I had established so much about myself and learned so much about myself. I'd established the fact that I loved working in property. I loved decorating. I loved it wasn't just necessarily the sort of making things pretty and all those sorts of things. I loved the actual kind of physical, creative process, I suppose. And so when I went back to my corporate job, it was to pay the bills, pay the debts, pay the credit card, what was kind of left. But it was equally, it went back with a kind of like, well, I'm going to go back and do this. But it's means to an end kind of thing. So whilst I was actually I relocated back up to London for the job, I was able to commute to an Able Skills College in Dartford and get my decorating qualification, which I went every weekend. And, you know, you had a little kind of room that you kind of practiced, and you did wallpapering, and got my qualification. And that was then the point where once the debt was paid off, I literally just packed up my car, you know, and moved back to Winchester and launched my decorating business.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. What a journey. If there was one lesson you've learned that every entrepreneur should know, what would it be?
I think it's, in some ways, it's adaptability. I think, you know, it's to back yourself and have that adaptability, because that particular property that we were sort of talking about earlier, it was an initial investment of £30,000. I sold it yesterday after 15 years. And, you know, what was supposed to be like a quick 3-month flip took me 15 years to actually sell it. But if I'd sold it then, I never, you know, the things that I've been able to do with that initial investment of £30,000, it allowed me, I remortgaged the place twice. I bought 2 other properties. I now sold it yesterday, and it will now allow me to fund further growth in my business. So sometimes things don't work out the way you kind of plan, your timeline. You know, you're quite impatient to get things done, you're impatient to achieve things, but sometimes you've got to adapt, and you've got to be prepared to kind of weather a bit of a storm. But as long as you kind of hold on tight and kind of back yourself and have that faith it's going to come good, it does.
Amazing. Amazing. What's your favourite business book?
Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect, which I'm actually revisiting at the moment, because it's a very basic principle, but it is such a true reminder. It's all about doing a little thing each day, which over time compounds. But it applies to so many things. And I think sometimes you can get so worn down by, you know, you don't feel sometimes you're making progress. And sometimes, you know, you'll have bad days, or, you know, or things don't feel, like I said to you, things won't come up quite right the way you plan them, or the timing won't be right. But if you continue that faith and do something small each day to work towards your goal, it actually has a massive effect. And he gives several examples in his book, you know, relating to the situations. So it's something, that it's like the 3rd or 4th time I've revisited this book.
I love those books that you go back to, because they make so much sense. And when you're forgetting it, and you go back to it and think, I've got to read this again, because turning up consistently, doing that compound effect is so important in everything that we do. Leanne, thank you so much for telling your story, for being so honest in the chapter, and I can't wait for others to read it.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, please like the video and click the subscribe button for this channel for more inspiration. If you're a businesswoman looking for that community that will support you and lift you up, come and join the Shine On You Crazy Daisy membership, offering online networking, co-working, collaboration, and monthly masterclasses to grow your knowledge. Go to thedaisychaingroup.com for more information. And for even more inspiration, please go to the link under the video and get your copy of the Shine On You Crazy Daisy series of books with inspirational and motivating stories from businesswomen around the world.